Hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, everyone. I speak weekly with fascinating people in tech. I speak with influencers, with experts, with entrepreneurs, and we're all trying to uncover some of the major trends out there, but also the effect on societies, on countries, on individuals. So today we have fabulous topic and we have fantastic guests. Samiran, how are you? Welcome.
Hi there, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we announced the topic, digital identity. Digital identity for economic growth and for inclusivity. This is a big topic, Samiran. So let's scratch the surface today and let's educate our audience a little bit. So I know you are the expert on magnitude of in many areas. So I do want to hear your opinion on digital identity basics first. Okay, could you kind of spell out what should we think when we hear digital ID, digital identity?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for asking me this very, very important question. So, I think more than digital identity, I think what we are really talking about is identity. And if you kind of look at the evolution of society, first when we lived in small communities, villages, tribes, everyone knew everyone. So, the identity problem was really solved because, you didn't need to find out who was what. You knew exactly. Samiran knew Irene, Irene knew Samiran. We trust each other. We can work together. Then we kind of course, crossed borders across states, whole countries. So countries started giving some kind of identifier. There was a driver's license. There is a voter card. There is something, some of a tax ID, and that was just to make sure that each citizen had a way of proving they are who they were. And when I meet you, and we had an exchange of transaction, we could kind of identify each other by our identity, which was recognized by a central authority. So if you meet me suddenly, I can say I'm Samiran, and I can, you know me, and I know you. I'm going into an airport, how do I prove I am myself? So I show my driver's license. I do all of that. But while we are such a developed world right now, it is like shocking to know that about 1 billion people still do not have any identity. And in fact, studies have shown that about more than 3 billion people, though they have some form of ID, that ID cannot really be used in the digital world, which means the world of e-commerce, the world of interaction on Netflix, the world of Amazon, the world of Facebook, and all of that. And the reason why this whole idea of digital identity has come up is because we have realized that we cannot now start the process of giving physical identity to everybody and reach 1 billion people at scale. So the only way to do it is to technology enable this. Is therefore we need to can at least digitally identify people, give them an identity so that they can prove who they are, and therefore we can provide benefit to them, provide education to them, and at the same time we can also include them in the natural process of commerce. So to the point that it is obviously going to be for the good of humanity, but it is also going to be good for business, because just doing good for no reason at all is not sustainable. So I think that in an essence is and there are various examples of digital identity. I think the UK has a form of it. India has Aadhaar. I think Nigeria has got a form of it. Canada has a form, and every country has got a form of digital identity in various stages of evolution. Unfortunately, Africa is a part of the world where it's least penetrated. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done there. But I think the issue really is that unless we are able to uniquely identify these people, it will be very difficult for us to reach them, both in terms of benefit as well as in terms of commerce. How do you sell to people you don't even know, or you can't even identify, or you cannot even know their preferences, their wishes, desires, what do they want, what is missing. So all of those things actually kind of tie into this whole concept of digital identity.
Understood. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So this is basically, right, our personas in digital world, right? And
Absolutely.
Good, good. So
Absolutely.
those who do not have this access, right? Those who simply do not have reliable internet in their parts of the world that basically, yeah, that basically is not there yet. So those who cannot express themselves digitally, right? They are risking not to be part of the digital economy. They're risking too, right, of their well-being going forward. So what should we be thinking about when we want inclusivity, when we want to reach out to that billion of people, right, and tap on their creativity and their ability to contribute? So how should we think about it? How governments should and companies should think about this?
So I think all of them really should. One is, of course, the fact that you need to create an identity and you need about what is in it for them. And in my opinion, I've always found that unless there is a win-win for both parties, it doesn't make sense. People cannot keep on doing work for altruistic reasons. So, just in again, studies have shown that if you divide the world into the emerging and the developed countries, I think there was a study by McKinsey that said that about 3% of economic value can be added to a mature economy if there is a high adoption of digital identity. And that number kind of goes up to 6% of economic value of the GDP if it happens to be an emerging economy, because there's just that much, the base is that much lower. And in terms of just value, I think 50% of that whole value that gets accrued in the GDP gets accrued to individuals, uh, and 50% of that value will kind of get accrued to businesses as well as government. So if you think about uh, a $1 trillion economy, and you say that it's like $60 billion is going to get added just by giving digital identity. 30 billion of that actually goes to governments and businesses, and 30 billion actually goes on as a benefit to the whole citizens of that country. So I think that's just a number to be aware of. There are other things, just in terms of just by having digital identity, and I'll just give you a couple of examples, is that about there could be as much as 90% reduction in customer onboarding costs if digital identity is enabled. So in any, whether it be KYC, whether it be banking, whether it be e-commerce, whether it be travel, so you can actually get about 90% cost takeout if you have digital identity. And just another number is about 20% of potential reduction in payroll fraud in emerging economies, just because you are paying people who don't exist. If you take all the pension schemes that the government runs, or just the whole problem of ghost workers and all of that. So if all of these things are enabled, businesses stand to gain, governments stand to gain, and obviously individuals also stand to gain. And once all these parties understand this, is when uh, you know this thing will gather momentum, because delivering it as a technology is the easy part. I think the more tough part is the adoption, the making sure that it kind of is used widely. And I was kind of very briefly part of the Aadhaar project in India. And one of the guiding principles of that program was that they thought of it as a platform, which means that they thought of it as something that all parts of the economy could plug into and use to provide goods and services. So the government's employment programs could use it, pension programs could use it, food subsidy programs could use it, banks could use it, uh, travel agencies could use. I mean, the airlines could use it, and whoever could needed to identify individuals could kind of plug into it as a you know platform connection, and therefore ease their process of verification, onboarding, which kind of led to the faster adoption of other relative to other digital identities.
So when we talk about technology here, right, what should we be thinking about? Because there is a lot of talks about blockchain, right, trust, traceability, but blockchain is not deployed everywhere. There are right adoption challenges there. So blockchain, AI, how this major technology is helping, analytics. I mean, what where companies should start when they address these issues.
In terms of the technology, again, technologies, uh, if you're rolling out digital identity, you should definitely use technologies which are easily accessible, skills for which are easily accessible within that country or geography. Some of the challenges that you should kind of keep in mind when you design it, because there's no specific solution that, oh, just please use this cloud, and please use this development platform and this database and all that, because that kind of becomes too technical and specific. But there are a couple of things that you need to kind of start worrying about, is that as you bring all of this digital technology together, it kind of becomes like a central monolithic approving authority, which in some countries are realizing now is creating a lack of flexibility. So you kind of need to think about the flexibility side of it. And number two is that you need to also start worrying about security. And you need to kind of worry about security by design, because as you automate everything, as you start connect everything, you become a very, very prime candidate for hacking, tampering, and all of those things. So you need to kind of design for that security, because I think there are enough and more instances where we've heard where your data has been put out on the dark web and somebody's hacked it and stuff like that. And the other issue that I think that you need to think about is that with the growing power of computing, is just this whole issue of quantum computing coming in. That that kind of computes at a scale, 20x, 10x, 20x, 30x of conventional computers. So even normal cryptography might be fall victim to hacking. So how do you start making things quantum safe? Things like that. There are another concept that companies like Microsoft are exploring, and a couple of the startups that I'm even working with are talking about, is how do you kind of move from this whole regime of centralized identity to decentralized identity, which means that from the uh, whole concept of an individual authority giving identity, how could you, Irene, control your whole persona yourself, and you can decide that I will allow Amazon to use my ID only for XYZ purpose. I will not allow Amazon to see my whole profile, but I will only let them see my payment and my buying behavior. But if I want to go to my doctor, I will let my doctor also look at my healthcare data. I will not allow everyone to see everything, and I can decide who sees what. So there's this whole concept of it's been there for a while, but the whole concept of decentralized digital identity is also another thing that companies, governments should think about, especially if they are designing something new today, and come and agencies that have already got digital identities, I think, will should start thinking about moving in that direction. Quantum safety, decentralized identity, crypto biometrics, probably the fact that that if you want to, rather than use a card, you want to just use your hand, your iris as a identifier. How do you make sure that that is also secure? No, you don't store it somewhere, it kind of goes to one place and disappears. So there are companies that hold patents in that field also. But yeah, sorry, I don't mean to keep babbling, but yeah, I think those are the kind of the design parameters that you need to think about. Not so much specifically the technology, but those are I think the couple of elements that kind of need to be considered as you think about all this. That at least immediately
Absolutely.
comes to my mind.
Absolutely. And what are the major risks there? Because you mentioned, right? You mentioned a couple already, but can we please spell out? Yeah.
So the risk really is that that the fact that the moment you kind of put something automate it, put anything on a system, it kind of becomes a target for some other malpractice or some other, it becomes attractive to someone else. I mean, I don't want to kind of give a bad example, but when the US government was probably trying to track Osama bin Laden, and the reason they couldn't do it because they all kind of went very low tech, right? It was all physical, one-to-one correspondence. That's at least what we read and hear in all the spy thrillers that came out from Hollywood. So, so the converse of that is that the moment you put everything online, make it digitally enabled, it becomes a very attractive target for misuse, hacking. The If you can easily access something out of your computer, chances are that you might be prone to misuse it. People internal to the identity authority could misuse it. People external could misuse it, which is where we kind of talked about this whole issue of how do you guard against something like that. So you've got to then start thinking about, can this thing be really democratized and decentralized so that they become, there is no single point of failure. Then if tomorrow so today I think we have things like IES 256, which is kind of very difficult to hack, but tomorrow when we have supercomputing much more easily available, if we have quantum computing at a reasonable price, then how do you kind of guard against that? I mean, just to kind of give you an example, so today if you decided to hack Bitcoin as an example, you would, and you had a quantum computer, you need a quantum computer with about 4,000 qubits processing capacity. But the fastest one available today, I think commercially, is about 50, 60 qubits. So we're still far away, but just in terms of being a little futuristic and having foresight, you must be willing to plan, must be ready to plan for that, because that the future is much closer than you think.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we did talk about big promise, right? We did talk about opportunity for governments and for countries even, right? To tap on, again, part of population that is not part of the economy at the moment. So let's go back to that impact to society, because we do want those without digital identity take part and produce and actually contribute. So where do you think the future lies? Because in 2021, right, we did talk a lot about digital divide. So where this kind of good approach going forward?
So I think the challenge is so 2030 is when the United Nations, as part of one of its SDGs, wants to give identity to everybody, whether it's digital or not. I mean, that's a matter of detail, but they want to provide identity to everyone so that at least the 7 billion or 8 billion or whatever that population will be that time become part of they are recognized and counted as citizens of the world, because today they are not. We don't know about them. We don't know where they are. They cannot do anything because, if you kind of read all the literature out there, people are not able to get jobs. People are not able to do business with other people. People are not able to travel. There is human trafficking because people cannot be found. Unfortunately, again, women have, as a percentage of the population, have lesser identity than men. So all of those issues exist. And it remains, so like I talked about it. So if you kind of just look at this as, you look at this as a problem, of course, it's a huge problem. But if you look at this as an opportunity, you're looking at 1 billion people who you can educate, 1 billion people you can feed, 1 billion people you can sell to, 1 billion people who will then in turn earn money and spend money, which will keep the wheels of commerce growing. So it's a huge, it's calling it just doing it for good is kind of defining it too narrowly. What it is really a huge opportunity to kind of address an untapped market, literally. That there are people out there who you have never sold to before, people who you are who will be a net new addition to the market, whether it be for benefit or it be for commerce. So I think that is what should be the driver, and that is what we should kind of aim towards. And I think if anything that the pandemic has taught it is that if you have to kind of reach people, if people have to also reach you, they must have the ability to transact. They may have an ability to identify themselves. So there's this whole concept of digital trust, that when two entities who don't know each other, they come together and they have to do business spontaneously. How do they create trust? And the only way to do that is to have reliable and verifiable identity. So I think that is a very, very important aspect of this whole perceived benefit of GDP growth, of savings, of payroll, of onboarding benefit, and of all the other things that we can do. I think recognizing this as a huge potential and then kind of going after it in a razor focused manner, both as governments as well as large corporates, because today entities like Facebook and Amazon and Google are kind of ecosystems by themselves. So if we were able to decentralize the allotment of identity and kind of put it on a blockchain and provide public private keys even for your Gmail ID and something, I'm just kind of thinking on the fly, and maybe that can become your digital identity. If somebody has a Gmail ID but has no other identity, maybe you can convert that into identity, and that can become a form of decentralized digital identity.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. You know what? Here we did talk with experts and influencers past few weeks, and we discussed micro businesses. Okay, how digital identity, right, will affect those micro business people, businessmen and businesswomen, because they survive, right, on their entrepreneurial and their ingenuity. So
Right,
do you,
right.
yeah, yeah. Can you give us a couple of examples? Because I've heard of the fantastic stories of women in Philippines, farmers in Africa, getting to know what this new age can provide to them, and really taking benefit of blockchain. And again, just having a cell phone with your apps right there, and just learning how to use it to improve your business. So any like memorable examples, Samiran, from that world?
So I think there are huge. There are all kinds of small businesses in India who, before the advent of uh, the internet and of Amazon as a channel or other kinds of e-commerce platforms, they were really small. I mean, whether it was home cooked meals. So people used to cook and give food to their neighbors. But we have so many of these home delivery services that have come out, which is like in India Zomato and Swiggy, and they have been able to aggregate this. And so today you can cook a meal and deliver it anywhere
Mhm.
in the city at least, and expand your market without doing anything, without having to worry about the rest of the infrastructure. Similar is the case of people selling all kinds of, from what can I say? I mean, from jumper cables for cars to flutes to these agarbattis and religious artifacts or whatever. All these kind of things, which are small cottage industries made in different parts of the country, mainly antique furniture, uh, idols of worship or whatever. And all they need is to kind of get onto the Amazon platform, sign whatever the contracts they have, and then off they go. And all they have to worry about is creating and fulfilling the order, and Amazon kind of takes care of everything else. So I think that is a fantastic way to do things. And I'm just kind of to connect it back to our topic, that all of that also obviously is enabled by the fact that if you have an ID, you can get a phone. If you have a phone, you can get into mobile commerce. If you have that, you can access payment systems, so it becomes easier for you to pay. Becomes easier for other people to use the public payment systems in India, like it's UPI, we have Google Pay and what have you. Payments can be moved easily, so that whole wheels of commerce can move so much more effectively if this the simple aspect of uh, technology enabled identity exists as a foundational layer in society.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, Samiran, for the talk today. So before we finish our session, can we kind of summarize a couple of takeaways? Okay, because we did talk about opportunity, we talk about technology, we talk about effect on micro businesses and individual entrepreneurs. So a couple of takeaways for the audience, please.
I would say that uh, and I think kind of just be repeating myself, but I would say that when we try to address or look at this issue of identity, we should start thinking about it as an opportunity and a potential to create a win-win. Because it's obviously is a very difficult problem. It probably requires a lot of investment, and it requires hard work in terms of to give people identity, to drive adoption, and to make sure that the whole ecosystem accepts it. So I think the key fundamental in my head, at least, is that we must look at this as a opportunity uh, to create a win-win exchange between the people we are giving identity and the rest of the economy. Only then, and unless there is that for-profit, selfish motive, there cannot be an ROI to just give an identity to someone, and most of those programs will kind of fail. So we must recognize what we will stand to gain from it, and then push forward and make sure that it happens. So unless there is selfish interest, this will not work. And there is definitely a lot of uh, value and money to be made if everybody has an identity.
Fantastic, fantastic. So yes, this topic is on what is it on the agenda of World Economic Forum, right? On many discussions happening right now, and maybe with
Yes.
this talk, right, we're kind of raising the awareness, and we're making businesses, individuals, and organizations thinking about that inclusivity that digital identity will provide. So Samiran, thank you so very much for this talk today. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope I've been able to provide some insight and perspective to your audience. And hopefully, if there are more questions and comments, we will try and get to those and answer them as well.